everybody. Schuyler Callihan here on the Between the Ears show. Thank you for tuning into today's game. By the way, I think West Virginia may have just hit another grand slam against Penn State. But anyways, congratulations to the baseball team on their massive win over the Nittany Lions last night. Today's our mailbag day, so we're going to dive into all of your guys' questions. Just make sure if you're new to this, if you have questions, whether it's about football, basketball, recruiting, transfer portal, or anything else, just hit me up on Twitter at Callihan _ to be a part of the mailbag for next week. So let's go ahead and jump right on into it. So our first question comes from MGTNQUASAR. I'm not even pretend to announce like I know I've seen this account on Twitter a good bit, but anyways, question is: are things looking up for the football team this year, and how good could the basketball team be this upcoming season? Looking up for the football teams would be very generous. um, it's still very early in the off season to really gauge how good this team's going to be. I would say, as currently constructed, it's not the greatest positions. It needs a little TLC. They need to get some guys in the portal for sure. I know they just picked up Jalen Ellis, Baylor wide receiver, yesterday. Don't know how he really fits in offensively. Not a very high volume guy, and I know he's going to have an impact probably on special teams in some sort, but I don't think that he's going to be a guy that's going to come in and be your number one receiver by any means. So they need more help at receiver. I would not be surprised if they still add one more. And obviously, they're looking for secondary help, maybe even a linebacker, a defensive lineman. So they're going to need to add some guys to this roster if they really want to take that next step. And I think a lot of it, too, depends on the quarterback play, right? I mean, we'd be foolish to not acknowledge that. Is Garrett Green or Nico Marchiol going to take a step and kind of separate themselves sometime in fall camp? And is it going to be a significant enough step for them to not only just win the job, but be a really good starting quarterback for this team? If that's the case, then yeah, a whole lot of things change, and all of a sudden you've got a much better football team. But a lot of it depends on the quarterback. We'll see what happens with that. Next question, or excuse me, got to get back to the previous question. The basketball team. Forgot the second part of that question. Could the basketball team? How good could the basketball team be this upcoming season? I think they could be really good. You know, you add Jesse Edwards, you add Kirk Risa, Omar Cerverio. I mean, Jose Perez is now in the fold. Like, there's a lot of really good pieces. Again, I think the one thing we always tend to forget in all this is how quickly can these guys come together. Even after last year, you know, Huggins brings in, you know, Toussaint and Matthews and Stevenson and all those guys. And, you know, halfway through the year, he talked a lot about, hey, this is the way it is in college basketball now. You know, you've got to go out and get transfers. But the bad part of it is it's going to take a long time for these guys to figure out how to play with each other, because they've been at so many different places with so many different teachings and backgrounds and habits that they formed elsewhere that they've got to get them coached out of here. Like, and sometimes it's not all bad habits, but it's just mental habits. Like, how do they see certain things on the floor? So just learning how to play with one another, that's going to take a little bit of time. So I think if they can get everything going, I mean, every team, you could say this about every team every year, but if you can get really going towards like mid-February and you're starting to put together a string of wins, then I'd say they have a good chance of making a run. But it's hard to tell. The talent is certainly there, but it's going to come down to how quickly they can mesh together. But the good thing is with Jesse Edwards, he's been around a while. You've got Kirk Reese, who's been around a while. And I think that's the biggest difference between this year's new batch of newcomers versus last year's batch is Kirk Reese. He's your facilitator. You really didn't have that last year. They're still playing without a true point guard. Having that true point guard that can see the floor, facilitate the rock, I think that's a huge difference in this year's guys that are coming into the program. Play Loudermilk. Is Gallagher on campus yet, or is he a fall enrollee? No, he is not in on campus right now. He was actually going to finish out his basketball season, then come, but then he ended up playing baseball, I believe it was. So he is still in high school, and he will be in Morgantown, I believe, probably sometime in June. But sometime this summer he will be there. So yes, he is on the way still. Next question comes from Hamza. With the renewed focus on NIL, is the football program looking to bring in more transfers from the portal? More, I don't think is the right word. Um, would they look to bring in maybe more high quality? Potentially. I don't know how the NIL really affects West Virginia as of right now because, I mean, let's be honest, we only have really one true year to go off of. So I think we're kind of gradually learning this and learning about this as well and how it impacts West Virginia. Um, I would say that there's a chance maybe like next season, regardless of whether Neal Brown's here or not, you'll see more high quality transfers. This year, I don't really know because I mean they've got some decent guys in the portal, but they're not top notch names, right? I mean they're guys that were depth players at other places. I mean just like Jalen Ellis, yet like I just previously mentioned a few minutes ago, didn't really play a whole lot. He had like 3 catches last season, so we'll see how that all comes together. I don't think they're going to go out and spend big money. I really don't. I would be shocked, as a matter of fact, if they did. And I think really, you go back to what they did last year, and they bring in JT Daniels. He's got this reportedly big high NIL deal, and you saw how it worked out. So, and I think this is going to be the same thing across all college sports, across all schools. You're going to see as the deeper we get into this NIL era, there's going to be a lot of businesses and a lot of people that are not going to want to support NIL as much in terms of how much money they're spending out. Because let's face it, you're going to have the JT Daniels where it just doesn't work out. You're going to have a kid that gets all this money. He's going to come in and unfortunately suffers a lot of injuries, and all of a sudden you just lost a lot of money on a player that's not on the field or that's not playing very well. So again, the deeper we get into this, we're probably going to see a lot of people peel back on the amount of money that they spend, and it's going to be a good thing. NIL should be there to support the student athletes while they're in college because they don't really have time to make extra money. To make $1 million, uh, that's a little steep in my opinion. Next question from Jordan WVU07. Who are the portal targets for WVU football and any rumors on folks leaving or will the team stay together? There's always going to be guys leaving. I'll just go ahead and throw that out there. I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but there will always be players leaving the program as well as there is coming in. So there will be some guys leaving the program at some point in time. Don't know exactly when, but it's just a matter of transfer portal, right? I mean, guys come in, they're not happy with their playing time or their outlook in the fall, and decide, hey, I'm going to hit the portal. They've already got 2 guys in there right now, both 2 offensive linemen, walk-ons, Dylan Ray and Jackson Oxley. So there will be more. And as far as the guys that they're targeting, we've got one place that you can go to and you can check it all out. It's go search the WVU football transfer tracker, and we've got everything from the guys that have committed through the transfer portal to WVU, guys that are leaving WVU, and then all of the guys that they are targeting that we have confirmed. So definitely go check that out. It's very useful. It shows not only the player, the position, what school they're coming from, but it also shows the schools that are interested in them and kind of the stats that they had either this previous season or for their careers. So it's a very cool spot that you can just go check it all out. We keep it updated. I try to keep it updated daily. But as crazy as the portal is, it can be a little hard. So just go check it out. A lot of names on there. I will give you one. Anthony Wilson, Georgia Southern defensive back. He'll be visiting here this weekend. So that's one name for you to definitely look out for. Kevin Triplett, RaeQuan battle comp. Oh, I'm gonna have to think about this one. RaeQuan battle comp. I mean, I think he actually, if we're just talking West Virginia, he does sort of remind me a little bit of like a. He reminds me of a version of Eric Stevenson. I wouldn't say he's quite Eric Stevenson. There's some differences in their game, but they can both shoot the ball at a very high clip from three. They can both be aggressive on the offensive end. They're not really selective shooters in that they're patient until they find their shot. They are shot hunters. They will go out and find shots. He can make tough shots too. Um, Defensively, he's decent, but there could be some work there. Rebounding, not much of a factor, but he can grab a few a game. Uh, he doesn't. He's not a high assist guy, and that shows in the numbers. But it's not that he's unselfish. I just don't think that he's a guy he's like Eric Stevenson again, in that he's not going to really run the offense for you, but he can set players up. So I would say he's a version of Eric Stevenson. Is he quite like Eric Stevenson? No, but he just doesn't have the experience. Obviously, I mean, when he started at Washington, he didn't really get a whole lot of playing time, and really didn't blossom until this past season. So I would say he's a version of Eric Stevenson, just to make it a West Virginia comparison, but that's a tough one. He is a really kind of a unique player, but that's the best I can come up with off the top of my head. Do you actually answer the mailbag questions from Lee? Yes, Lee, I do. I do. I'm answering every single one of them right here, right now, and I just answered your question. So, uh, yes, if you have a question, send them in again at Callan_ on Twitter. I will answer every single one of them, even the ones like this that are not a sports related question. Um, we going are we getting battle from Elena Morris? And it's got a screenshot of all the West Virginia athletes that he is following on. I believe that's Instagram. I don't I don't want to say it's a lock, but I would say West Virginia is in a good position for battle. And I don't know exactly what the holdup will be. Maybe just kind of checking out his options. He doesn't have any other visits set up as of right now that I know of. So I would assume that West Virginia is in very good position to land him. So I think it's just a matter of time. The next question from WVU Sports Info: how are we looking for RaeQuan battle? Again, good position. Don't can't really say more on that. Jacob Clark, any football targets that the staff is making a priority? Kind of touched on this earlier. Again, with Anthony Wilson, he'll be visiting this weekend. They've got a couple of others that they're going hard after. Again, check out that WVU football transfer tracker. It's also kind of my helpline too, because sometimes I forget all these guys that they're going after when you mix in the basketball portal recruiting, basketball high school recruiting, football portal recruiting, football high school recruiting. It's a lot of names to keep track of, and sometimes you get them all over the place. So yeah, go to that transfer tracker. It is very helpful, and it'll help you out a ton. William Thompson, WV football is predicted to finish last in the Big 12 in some publications. Why has Neal Brown had a hard time at WVU? Many thoughts on why, but what is yours? I mean, I really hate to play this card because I'm a guy that has been very, very, I wouldn't say hard or critical of Neal, but I spit the facts, man. Like it's not been a good 4 years. It has been an absolutely brutal 4 years, and that's putting it light. Like this team has not shown any sense of going in the right direction at all. And really, the only year that you can say, okay, yeah, they showed they were taking a step was COVID year, 2020. They were 6-4 in a shortened season, and their bowl one came against Army. So really, they were 5-4 with a bowl win against Army. They beat Eastern Kentucky. You take those two wins away, they're 4-4, and all of a sudden you're thinking, man, is that even really that good of a season? So I think it's tough because you came in at a tough time. You know, Dana didn't really recruit well that last year. I mean, it was a bad, very bad position for Neal to come in with that recruiting class. And that's not a knock on that recruiting class. It's just he didn't really spend a whole lot of time recruiting. Um, there wasn't really a whole lot of guys that they needed that that were already taken care of at positions that they needed. Quarterback, for example. um, that's why Neal had to go out and get Austin Kendall. But you know, he came in with a very kind of a thin, sort of weak recruiting class, and then all of a sudden you've got a bunch of guys transferring out, which is to be expected in year one, not necessarily in year 3 or 4, but in year one, and then you get to a couple of years where it's just not really clicking. COVID comes around, and you're having to do all these evaluations, and I really do think that a lot of people don't consider this. Like when COVID came, and I mean, I know it's the same for everybody else out there, but when you go out and you're in the beginning of your tenure at a school and you've won 10 games in 2 years, it's hard to really get these kids convinced that this thing's heading in the right direction when they can't come to your campus. Like that's hard. So I, you can't really make the excuse of COVID because, again, we've seen other coaches that came in the same time as Neal Brown, Chris Kleiman, and has got that thing rolling, who, obviously just had K-State in the Big 12 championship game. So I don't really know why. I think the decision to bring in Graham Harrell, even though I think it was the right decision to hire a coordinator, I think he did so late, and I think he should have done so earlier. And I think it's going to be a big mistake going into this season if he decides, I'm going to call the plays again. And I know Chad Scott hasn't had any play calling history, and I know that could be a little risky going into a year where he knows, like, I'm on the hot seat probably, but I would be very, very cautious of calling the plays just because it takes so much responsibility and so much time away from everything else that he needs to do as a head coach. And it could lead to another long year. So this is definitely a telling year for Neal Brown. I don't think I'm breaking any news by saying that. Everyone knows it. It's year 5. It's time to win football games. So if he doesn't, it'll be interesting to see what type of leash Ren Baker gives him. And if it's not a winning season, if it's not a bowl season, I would have to think the Neal Brown era is going to be over after year 5. But I don't make that decision. Ren Baker does. We'll see what happens. It's a tough schedule. That's going to do it for today's BTE mailbag. Again, if you have any questions, football, basketball, recruiting, transfer portal, anything that you have on your minds, even Mountaineers and the pros, shoot them at me at Callihan Twitter, at Callihan _ on Twitter. Thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Mountaineers Now. Follow us on Twitter at Mountaineers Now as well. Thank you guys again for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with a brand new episode. Take care.